So, all right, what's your name?
Mike Rheault.
Okay, and how are you involved in all this?
Well, I'm the treasurer for the Fergus Falls Fish and Game Club, and we're one of the primary sponsors for this year's Minnesota Duck Summit.
And why did you feel the need to do this?
Well, the whole issue of the low numbers of waterfowl in the state of Minnesota has become concerning, and we've looked at a lot of causes and effects for the reasons for it, and there's not one simple answer, but we felt that there needs to be a dialogue started within the state to really try to push the issues of what can we do, how can we do it, some of the best ways of doing it. And we know that Minnesota has been a rearing state historically, and we're just not seeing the ducks that are reproducing within the state. And just drive around the countryside, you see a lot of water, but you don't see much for ducks on it. And we've historically had lots of ducks in Minnesota, so we got to look at some of the cause and effects and what we can do in the short term, what we can do in the long term. We know habitat is the main key, but it's pretty tough to change how the farming practices have changed over the years, and how we can, to get back to the prairie plot hole days that we had 50, 80 years ago is going to be pretty tough to do. So sometimes we're going to have to look at some other means to try to bring back waterfowl to some huntable numbers.
And when you get a bunch of people in here like this, or if you hear hunters talking or see it on social media, hunters a lot of times don't feel heard. This is a place and this is a way that hunters can be heard by DNR and of those people, right?
Exactly. We're sitting here, we've had people that'll write letters to the local DNR offices up to the state offices, and it's kind of a bureaucracy we deal with, trying to deal with the state governments on it. And we kind of feel that a groundswell, a support of the local sportsmen throughout the state of Minnesota need to come together to really let the state agencies know what our concerns are and what we feel could be done, and to hear back from them what they are doing, and there's a lot of good restoration work that the DNR works with, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, SWC, everybody out there, but yet it's still not bringing back the numbers that to its day. But there's just such a loss of habitat, and maybe we got to take a little pressure off the ducks in another way. If they don't have places to come back and rest and raise their young and stuff like that. If you lose the hen populations that don't come back to their homing nests, I mean, you take wood ducks, for example, a hen mallard will come back repeatedly to the same, for a wood duck, repeatedly come back to where she's raised young from before, and her young will come back to that same location. So there is some homing instincts in waterfowl, and that's kind of what we need to do. We want to get the habitat out there for them, but yet we got to take some pressure off of them. Yeah. Because you hear a lot of people say the science doesn't prove that hunting pressure has a detrimental effect. Well, how can it not? You
can get that data from other hunters. They know, for sure.
It's frustrating. Everybody says, well, the science doesn't prove it. Well, take common Joe Hunter out there and what his experience is. That's science to me.
That's data.
That's raw data in its truest form.
So I can't help but notice, there's probably, what you said, 250 people here, and I'm probably in the youngest 5%.
I would say so.
So how do you think that we can not only get more hunters involved, more young people involved, not only in hunting, but in this conservation field in space?
That's a really good question. As you can see, I'm a white of hair or a lack of hair, but and some of us long drawn out hunters that have been around for years have seen a lot of changes, and we try to instill it in our younger generations. But it seems like there's a lot of distractions for the younger generations.
You
So
bet.
we grew up more in a rural life setting, you know, and where kids were more exposed to the outdoors, and we're urbanizing, and you don't see kids having those opportunities, you know. We have our local Fergus Falls Fish and Game Club. We put on a woody camp for 13 to 15-year-olds that expose kids to waterfall and the outdoors, everything involved in it.
Yeah.
We need more programs like that.
Like your woody cap, like your hat.
Yep, my woody cap hat. You know,
Yeah.
so you know, what's the trick of getting younger people back into the outdoors, into hunting, into the waterfall where they see and want to be concerned? You know, there's a lot of things that we've done. Hunting has always been kind of a group, a family, a get together. You know, it's just not just for, you know, how an individual that goes out and hunts, but you know, it's a lot of times it's that tradition. You know, and the outdoor recreation sports. We talk about our traditions, and it's camaraderies that you build and stuff like that. And it's we seem to be starting to lose that in our busy day-to-day lives, and we need to kind of step back a little bit and see what it's really truly should be about.
Yeah. So I'm asking everybody I interview this: what's the best bird hunting memory you've had? What's the best day you've ever had? It doesn't have to be in Minnesota or with ducks. It could be pheasants or grouse. Or what's the best day of bird hunting you ever had?
Every day out.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
You know, I've had those days where it's been bluebird days and not a bird in the sky, but I've heard, you know, the muskrats slapping in the water in front of me or whatever.
Always something going on in the marsh.
There's always something in the outdoors that you can go out and you can see, and you see that beautiful sunrise, that beautiful sunset, you know, and just to be outside. To me, it isn't about the kill, you know. I mean, there's been days that were fabulous, you know, where you shot everything was coming into, and you shot everything that came by, but that to me wasn't the best days. It's just every day out there.
That's the answer I keep getting from everybody. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.